안녕하세요. KT의 최두환 사장입니다. 작년 봄에 서울에서 있었던 글로벌 웹 테크놀로지 2008년에서 석박사와 함께 기조 강연했었고, 이게 겨우 1년밖에 안 지난 것 같은데 그간 인터넷 환경이 크게 변한 것 같습니다. 특히 그 중에서도 모바일 인터넷 환경의 변화는 KT의 신사업을 총괄하는 저로서도 매우 놀랄 정도로 빨리 변하고 있습니다. 오늘 인터넷 발명의 40주년을 기념하여 인터넷의 대가인 서프 박사와 이렇게 빨리 변하는 인터넷 환경에 대하여, 그리고 인터넷의 현재와 미래를 논할 수 있어서 매우 기쁘게 생각되고 많이 기대가 됩니다. 인터넷 프로토콜을 개발하고 또 지금은 인터넷 전도사로 활동하고 계시는데, 전 세계 대상을 다니면서 많은 사람들을 대상으로 강연하고 있는 걸로 알고 있는데, 그런 강연, 그 다음에 또 인터넷 전도사의 역할로서 궁극적으로 사람들한테 인터넷에 대해서 무엇을 알리고 싶으신지요?
Okay, so I think the most important message that I can deliver has to do with the scope and the rate of change of the internet and its content. Here we are in 2009. We are just about to enter the second decade of the 21st century. And we can tell some things are happening to the internet today. We can make some projections about what will happen in the next 10 years. The first thing is many, many more mobiles will be on the network. The second thing is that a great deal more information is going to come into the net, sometimes from users like you and me. YouTube is an example of that. We estimate 23 hours of video are being uploaded into YouTube per minute on the internet today. And I have no idea how many hours of YouTube is being watched by our users. I don't know how much. A lot. Another thing which we can see happening is that the access speeds to the internet are going up. And frankly, Korea has become one of the very high points in access to the internet. You have very high data rate mobiles. You have very high data rate dedicated services. Many other countries wish that they had as much penetration and as much high-speed access as you have. Sometimes it makes me think I should move to Seoul, where I would get better access to the internet than I do here in Washington, D.C. Another thing which we know about is that the users of the internet are distributed differently now than they were 10 years ago. There are about 600 million people in Asia that are on the internet out of about 1.6 billion worldwide. Asia represents the single largest geographic user base on the internet. No other continent has as many users as you do. The Chinese have 338 million users all by themselves. So they represent a very significant force on the network. The important thing about the influx of Asian colleagues onto the net is that there's going to be an increase in the content of the network coming from these sources. And I expect to see a great many more contributions coming from Korea and China and Japan and the other countries of Asia. Google recognizes that there will be a very large amount of information coming onto the net in different languages. And we have been working very, very hard to find ways to translate, make everyone's information accessible and understandable. This is not an easy thing to do, but we've now announced 51 languages we can translate to and out of 51 languages on the internet today. The quality of the translations is not perfect, and the quality varies depending on the pair of languages that we're dealing with. But we're always trying to improve that quality. And when a user makes use of Google's translation services, If we don't do a good job, there's an opportunity for a native speaker to say, you could have translated this better, and that helps us make our software work better. Another thing which is happening during this next decade is an increase in the number of devices that are connected to the network. Things like kitchen appliances, refrigerators, washing machines, ovens, and things like that, picture frames. We are also seeing sensor networks showing up on the internet. There will be many, many of those because many homes and many office buildings will be instrumented using sensor systems. I have a personal example that I can share with you. In my home, each room has a small radio-based sensor. It's running the IP version 6 protocol. I'm very proud of that because that's the new generation of protocols. And it is keeping track of the temperature, the humidity, and the level of light in each room. One of the rooms in the house is the wine cellar. And this is a very important room to me because I have to make sure that the temperature stays below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Otherwise, the wine will go bad. And I like to keep the humidity up so the corks don't dry out. So that system is monitoring the temperature and the humidity and the light levels every 5 minutes. And it stores the data in a server that's sitting in a rack in my basement. That particular sensor system will send an SMS to my mobile if the temperature goes above 60 degrees. And that way I can respond by calling my wife to say, turn the cooler back on, the wine is getting warmer. I believe, though, that we are going to see a large number of homes and office buildings instrumented this way because there's another project which Google is participating in and the American government is pursuing, and we call it the smart grid. We're talking about power generation and distribution. For the first time in history, it's possible to imagine appliances that use electricity, that consume electricity, to be controlled by the power generation system to say, why don't you stop cooling the house right now? Why don't you stop heating the water right now? Because I'm hitting a peak load. Up until now, the only thing we could do would be to respond to the demand for electricity by increasing its production. Now we have the possibility not only to do that, but to also say, why don't you reduce your demand right now? I don't have enough capacity to take care of everyone. So this smart grid idea will lead to a large number of sensors all around the internet. Google has been investing very heavily in what we call cloud computing. What that really means is very, very large-scale data centers with a large number of computers in each of them. We copy information from one data center to another to make sure that your data is always available to you, no matter where you are and no matter where it is. So if a data center goes away for some reason, like a power failure, it won't matter because the information is copied in multiple sites. If the application that you're using at the moment requires more computing power, maybe because you're searching through a large database, the cloud computing environment allows us to expand the capacity that is needed to serve your application, and when it's done, that capacity is turned over to someone else. So it's like a gigantic time-sharing system with a very large amount of resource that can be dynamically allocated to different functions. We think that is a very efficient way of allocating and sharing a great deal of computer power. We think that's going to be a very common model in the future. So those are the various things that I can anticipate during the next 10 years. I have no doubt that I'm going to be surprised by new ideas that people have, some coming from Korea, no doubt, that I didn't think of, and maybe no one else did either.
오케이, 설명에 감사드리고요. 지금 말씀하신 내용에 거진 다 저도 같이 동감을 합니다. 그 다음에 제가 또 두 번째로 우리 빈트 박사님한테 여쭤보고 싶은 게 뭐냐면은 아까 우리 빈트 박사님이 말씀하셨다시피 모바일이 굉장히 확산이 되고 있거든요. 그러면 모바일이 확산될 때 제일 중요한 게 UI, UX, User Interface and User Experience 같아요. 지금 애플의 아이폰이 하나의 큰 업적을 이루었지만은 아마 그것만 가지고 좀 모자랄 것 같은데 앞으로의 모바일 인터넷에서의 User Interface나 User Experience는 과연 어떻게 변하는 게 가장 좋을지 혹시 생각해 보신 게 있는지요?
This is actually a very interesting question for us because we believe that many people will have their first experience with the internet through a mobile, and some of them may only get access to the internet through a mobile. So there are 2 or 3 ways to manage the problem of presenting applications through what could be a very confined interface. This is the BlackBerry, for example, has a very small display and a very small keyboard. So here are the 2 ideas that we're interested in. One of them is to use voice to interact with the internet, to speak to the internet and have it respond to you rather in an audible way rather than a textual way. Or, alternatively, you could speak a question and have a response come up on the display. But a third way, which is of real interest to me, is that when you walk into a room like the one you're in right now, you'll notice that there are some projectors that are putting my image up on the screen, or you have a large screen video display. Imagine for a moment when you walk into the room that your mobile is able to detect the existence of a large screen video display or a projection unit. It now knows that there are alternatives to presenting information on the small display screen. So when you're interacting with the internet, maybe by speaking to it, the answer, instead of coming up on this display, comes up on the big display because this device discovered there is another place to present information. Or, for example, you walk into a room like the one you're in, and you're going to make a presentation, and you have one of the Google presentation docs waiting to show people. The mobile could actually tell the display system, if it's properly programmed, please go to this place on the internet and pull a copy of the presentation file and present it for me. This now becomes the remote controller. It's part of the internet. It's able to talk to any device on the internet, including the ones that are in the room with you. If you think for just a moment about what happens when you go home, probably have a lot of entertainment equipment, television sets, recorders, speaker systems, and things like that. And you probably have a remote control like this one for each box. So you have a collection of these little remote controls. And the first problem you have is to figure out which one goes with which box. So I'm suggesting that we get rid of those. This one goes away. And the only thing you use is your mobile. And it communicates with all of the devices in your entertainment system. And if it does that by going through the internet, you don't have to be in the same room with all those devices. You could be anywhere on the internet and interact with your entertainment system. I do this on a very regular basis today. When I'm traveling, I have access to all my entertainment system through the internet. And I can tell my video recorder to record these television programs, to erase these other programs. And generally to perform those functions that I would normally ask for it to do when I'm at home. So by putting all these things up on the net, you make them remotely accessible. The same could be said for the security system in the house. The same could be said for the environmental controls in the house. So your mobile could become your personal controller for all of your equipment at home and in the office, in the car, and the things that you carry around with you. This is a question that I am interested in understanding in Korea especially. One of the reasons that the internet has been such an interesting place to be is that here in this country it has been very, very open. Anyone can put a new application on the network without having to get permission from anyone to try it out. And that's why companies like Google were possible, because the founders of the company simply designed their web search engine and put it onto the network and made it available to everyone. So the question I have is whether the internet is open in that way in Korea. Can anyone put up a new application and let the rest of the world try it out?
오케이. 굉장히 좋은 질문이시고요. 그러니까 지금 한국에서 보고 있는 인터넷은 지금 빈트 박사님이 말씀하신 것처럼 오픈으로 가려고 생각을 합니다. 그리고 KT로 봐가지고는 오픈을 지금 굉장히 많이 준비하고 있습니다. 그런데 아직까지도 한국의 인터넷은 미국의 인터넷처럼 100% 오픈은 안 해요. 그러니까 지금은 이제 저희가 오픈을 준비한 단계로 보고요. 그 오픈에서 이제 KT가 제일 앞장서서 가려고 그럽니다. 근데 그 1차적으로 이제 저희가 생각하는 것은 이제 컨텐츠 오픈도 생각하고 있고요. 그다음에 플랫폼 오픈, 아마 플랫폼의 오픈이 제일 중요할 거예요. 그다음에 이제 저희 같은 경우에는 KT 같은 경우에는 디바이스 오픈까지 생각을 같이 하고 있습니다. 그래서 현재 사실은 KT가 굉장히 중요하게 보고 있는 것 중에 하나가 안드로이드를 활용한 디바이스와 예를 들면 플랫폼의 오픈을 시월에서 고려하고 있고요. 안드로이드 오픈 플랫폼을 활용한 어플리케이션의 컴피티션까지 KT가 준비를 하고 있습니다.
May I follow up with another short question? I'm really excited to hear that you have an interest in making the network more open. We are very committed to open platforms like the Android operating system or the Chrome browser and the to-be released Chrome operating system. A lot of our applications have what we call application programming interfaces, so other people can present information through them, like Google Earth and Google Maps. So is this a decision, this openness, is this something that the government regulators need to decide? Or is this something that the service providers have to decide about making the network more open?
지금 이제 오픈을 할 때 우리 서프 박사님이 여쭤보신 게 이게 오픈이 가버먼트 레귤레이션에 관계된 거냐 안 그러면 서비스에 관계되냐고 물으시는 것 같은데요. 근데 대부분의 오픈은 서비스 사업자가 처리할 수 있습니다. 물론 굉장히 국부적인 것은 아직까지도 이제 정부의 레귤레이션에 관련돼 있어요. 예를 들면 개인정보 보호의식 같은 것은 정부 차원의 레귤레이션에 관련돼 있지만은 지금 말씀하시는 대부분의 어플리케이션의 경우에는 이제 서비스 사업자가 이제 자체적으로 오픈을 처리할 수 있고 그 점에서 저희가 앞서가고자 하고 있습니다.
So I'm very glad to hear that, and I want to encourage you in this effort to keep the network open, because that's where all the interesting ideas come from. It's from people who have access to the net and are allowed to try things out without having to get permission.
달리 하나 예를 들어 드리면은 한국의 인터넷 기업 협회라고 하는 단체가 있습니다. 이제 그 단체가 우리 빈트 서프 박사님이 말하는 예를 들면 오픈 인터넷의 이벤젤리스트로 굉장히 열심히 활동하고 있습니다. 그래서 그분들의 목소리가 아마 한국의 미래의 목소리라고 생각하시는 게 맞을 거예요. 조금 전에 우리가 저기 모바일 인터넷에서의 유즈 익스피리언스나 유즈 인터페이스를 이야기했는데요. 두 가지를 말씀하셨어요. 보이스 액티베이티드 인터페이스. 그다음에 두 번째는 이제 다른 기기하고 연동되는 인터페이스를 말씀하셨어요. 저는 굉장히 좋은 아이디어라고 생각합니다. 근데 이제 제가 여쭤본 거에는 한 가지를 더 여쭤보고자 했는데요. 어떤 거냐면은 사실은 언제나 캐리하고 다니는 인터넷. 그는 제가 옛날에 우리 빈트 박사님하고 이야기할 때는 인비지블 인터넷이라고 하는 용어를 써줬어요. 그러니까 언제나 캐리하고 다니는 인터넷의 경우에는 아까 말씀하신 유저 인터페이스 중에 보이스 액티베이션은 가능하지만 다른 장비와 연동되는 인터페이스는 유저 인터페이스는 좀 어렵거든요. 그러니까 언제나 캐리하고 다니고 혼자서 쉽게 볼 수 있는 인터넷의 경우에 혹시나 유저 인터페이스로서 생각하고 계신 게 있는지를 추가로 질문드립니다.
Actually, this is a very interesting idea that there will be an invisible internet. You are quite right. And some of it shows up in the sensor networks that we're talking about. Some of it shows up in the devices that are on the internet that talk to each other, but they don't talk to us. They don't need to. They're coordinating their own actions. So I think that we will probably see an increasingly large part of the internet being used by devices that are talking to each other that we don't notice. They're just doing work for us while we're doing something else. And I find that to be rather an interesting idea because the internet now kind of hides in the background and it's just there when you need it. On the other hand, I also think that the internet is going to be more and more visible to us because we will rely on it to do various things. We didn't mention this before, but one of the interesting features of mobiles is that they often know where they are from either the global positioning satellite system or from estimating where you are based on the radio base stations that the mobiles connect to. That means that you can ask questions of the internet that relate to where you are. For example, where is the nearest hospital? Where is the nearest bank? Where is the nearest school? That means that information in the net that has geographic significance is getting more valuable because people are interested in knowing things about where other places are or what is actually going on in those places, what events are going on. So I think another very important part of the internet's evolution is an increasing amount of information related to location. And I'm sure that that is going to be a central part of the internet's development over time. We actually talked a little bit more about the user interface to the mobiles. One of them is to use speech as a way to interact with a mobile. Another one is to use other devices that are nearby. Now, I don't know whether this is true in the Korean hotels, but in the American hotels, when you walk into the room, you often see a keyboard on a table. The keyboard has a wireless connection to the television set. And so you can use the keyboard to surf the internet using your TV. But you could also use the keyboard with your mobile. So you put the mobile on the table and the keyboard talks to the mobile using Bluetooth, for example. And so suddenly the mobile becomes just one of several devices that are serving you in your use of the internet. So we're no longer confined to the restrictions of these small devices because we can use additional equipment in the room to expand our access or to make more convenient our access to this system.
인터넷 컨텐츠의 중요성 모두가 다 세계 어디서나 모든 나라의 국민들이 다 접할 수 있는 컨텐츠를 이야기했고요. 두 번째 우리가 또 인비지블 인터넷을 이야기를 했잖아요. 그렇다면은 이제 예를 들면 언제나 가지고 모든 사람이 활용할 수 있는 인터넷의 방향은 제 견해로는 인텔리전트 날리지 서비스 프로바이더로 생각을 하거든요. 개인적인 그러니까 각 개인한테 필요한 날리지를 인텔리전트하게 프로바이딩하는 툴로서의 인터넷을 굉장히 중요하게 여기고 그것을 하나의 인터넷 서비스의 방향으로 보고 있습니다. KT는 그 점에 대해서는 우리 밴드 서프 박사님의 의견은 어떠신지요?
This is another idea that Google is really excited about. You remember that our whole purpose in life is to try to organize the world's information and make it accessible and useful. But what we know is that we are a long way from reaching that goal. We can see a great amount of information coming into the network from the users like you and me who want to share that information with everyone. What's hard to do, though, is to have your computer understand what that information is. So when we do a search on the internet today, put in a string of Korean words, we look for web pages that have those words in them. But our computer doesn't know what the words mean. If we could ever get to the point where the software actually understands what the words mean, it may be able to find things on the net that are relevant, but which don't actually use those words, but use words that have similar meaning. I know that Eric Schmidt, our CEO, hopes that someday it will be possible to have a dialogue with Google, with the internet, and to describe to Google what it is that you are trying to accomplish, and have Google come back and say, oh, you need information like this. Here is a web page, here is a book, here is a video that will help you solve the problem or answer the question that you're trying to answer. Today, we aren't capable of doing that. The best we can do is to say, you asked us about these words and we found these pages on the internet or this book or this video that has those words in it, but we don't know what they mean. So our big challenge is to get the computers to actually understand the meaning of things and then help people find that information. That's the way you begin to turn information into knowledge that you can actually do something with. Okay, so I'm curious to know why it is that mobile penetration in Korea is less than it is in Japan, for example. I had actually thought that mobiles were as popular in Korea as they are in Japan. The ones I've seen in Korea have higher data rates than anywhere in the whole world. So can you help me understand more about the mobile market in Korea and what the penetration is like and whether you think it's going to go up?
일본이 모바일 인터넷에서 앞서간 이유는 재미있게도 한국의 유선 인터넷 인프라가 상대적으로 일본에 비해서 또 무선 인터넷에 비해서 너무 좋았기 때문에 일어난 현상이기도 합니다. 예를 들면 유선에서 할 수 있는 수준과 무선에서 할 수 있는 수준의 차이가 너무 차이가 났기 때문입니다. 예를 들어 일본은 PC 기반 인터넷이 활성화되기 전에 조금 늦었죠. 일본은 PC 기반 인터넷 활성화가요. i모드가 도입돼서 성공을 이뤘지만은 한국의 경우에는 사고 빠른 인터넷, 유선 인터넷이 너무나 빨리 들어와 있어 가지고 비싸고 느린 인터넷을 잘 받아들이기 위해서는 어려웠었습니다. 하지만 미국에서는 아이폰 같은 스마트폰의 등장으로 유선 인터넷에 버금가는 모바일 인터넷 서비스가 가능해지며 모바일 인터넷이 빠르게 활성화되고 있습니다. KT는 이런 국내의 직접적인 또는 간접적인 경험에 기초하여 어디보다도 앞선 모바일 인터넷 활성화를 적극적으로 준비하고 있습니다. 또 도전과제를 모바일 인터넷의 도전과제에 대해서 여쭤보셨는데요. 그 도전과제로는 저는 가격 문제, 기술 문제, UI UX 문제, 그다음에 킬 애플리케이션 문제 등 4가지로 보고 있습니다. 가격 문제는 정액제 또는 부분 정액제로 풀어갈 예정이며, 기술은 여러 가지 기술 중에서도 특히 모바일 브라우저나 모바일 서치를 어떻게 잘하는가에 신경을 쓰고 있습니다. 그 다음에 유저 인터페이스나 유저 익스피리언스는 최근에는 계속 빠른 발전하고 있기 때문에 앞으로 대두될 베스트 어베이러블한 UI, UX를 가장 쉽게 활용할 수 있는 체제로 우리의 플랫폼과 단말을 구현해 나갈 생각입니다. 킬러 애플리케이션도 미리 말씀드린 바와 같이 오픈, 개방성이라고 하는 게 그 해법이라고 생각하고, 단말의 오픈과 플랫폼의 오픈, 또 등달아 서비스의 오픈까지 같이 준비하고 있습니다. 그 한 예로서 KT는 안드로이드 플랫폼의 오픈도 저희가 준비를 하고 있습니다. 네, 오늘 이렇게 해서 인터넷의 대가이고 인터넷의 아버지라 불리는 빈트서프 박사가 만나서 이렇게 인터넷의 현재, 미래, 그리고 트렌드를 이야기해 볼 수 있어서 매우 기쁩니다. 근데 이게 굉장히 짧은 디스커션이고, 짧다 보면 깊게 들어갈 수 없으니까요. 빈트서프 박사님이 한국에 오시든지, 제가 다음에 미국에 가서 빈트서프 박사님 만나든지, 어쨌든 더 긴 시간을 가지고 서로 더 깊게 인터넷의 현재와 미래를 나누고, 그리고 또 같이 발전시켜 나갔으면 좋겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much for arranging this and for putting up with my problems. It was really a very interesting exchange, and I look forward sometime to meeting you face to face.